shit. It's the most best, most wonderful, most fantastic. Your head's gonna fucking come off and fly around like that Indonesian ghost with the lungs hanging off of it, because it's time for the Rage Select podcast here on Rage Select.
Well, goddamn!
Yeah, damn right, John. Get psyched, get hyped, get pumped. It's time. Fucking screaming in my house. I hope nobody calls the cops. All right, here we go.
Call the cops.
Call the cops. See if I care. Yes, everybody, that's right. It's time for the Rage Select podcast. And I am Jeff.
I'm John.
So I tell you what, ladies and gents, we're going to try something a little bit different this week. We're going to try to hybridize, John. We're going to try to crossbreed two different podcasts, the old Rage Select podcast and the new Rage Select podcast. And we're going to do that by talking a little bit before we get into the gaming news about something that is near and dear to your hat every time that I see you. For those of you who don't get that joke, John wears an Iron Fist hat constantly. Let's talk a little Iron Fist, John.
I like the hat.
Let's talk a little Iron Fist.
I like the Iron Fist comic.
Yep.
It's one of the few things that Mr. Murphy and I share in common.
Yeah.
We're both fans of the Iron Fist.
I watched the Netflix series last week. You watched the Netflix series last week. We are not going to spoil, but we're gonna try to talk around. It's been a while, but we're going to try to talk around.
I'm gonna spoil everything.
He's Iron Fist. Oh shit! Oh god.
He's the immortal weapon.
Damn it. Okay, so let's get started here. Let me just say, let's just do hot takes right off the bat. I didn't really like this series. It wasn't the worst thing. It wasn't The Room, but it was probably my least favorite of the Netflix series that have come out so far.
So I liked it.
Okay.
I did like it.
Yeah.
But the people seem to misunderstand when I say, because this is one of those situations where I feel like the things that I don't like about it irritate me more than they should.
Okay.
But when I remove my preconceived notions of what I wanted the show to be from my purview and look at it just as a show by itself, it's pretty good. It has a lot of fucking problems.
Okay, well let me talk a little bit about my problems with it, because I don't read the Iron Fist comics, so I'm not really super familiar with the character of Iron Fist. But probably the single greatest issue. Okay, first off, this has all of the problems that just about every other Netflix series has had,
except in reverse.
Well, for me, too many episodes. Just too goddamn many episodes.
And the reason I say that is because most of the Netflix shows, you get around to episode 9, maybe episode 10, and they kind of start to drag a little bit. Here, it's right at the fucking beginning.
Yep, it does not do itself any favors.
And I think that's its first mistake, is that they went, I don't know if they consciously did it, but it feels like they went, people complain that we're kind of dragging at the end of this. Why don't we move those episodes to the front?
Why don't we drag at the beginning instead of the end?
And make people stop watching after the first episode.
Right.
Instead of them getting to episode 9 or 10 and then stop watching.
Sure. It's a bold move, Netflix.
It is a bold move.
Let's see if it pays off, Cotton. The other problem that I had with it, just like just about every other Netflix, was there was one too many there was a third plot that was dull as dishwater. I call this the Karen Page problem, where in the first season of Netflix, I fucking hated all the Karen Page shit. Stick with Daredevil or Kingpin, cut all that Karen Page shit out of there. It's not bad, it's just not as good as the other two, and every time they go to it, I kept wanting them to go back. The same was true with a lot of the political stuff in Luke Cage. I felt like most of the hand stuff in Daredevil could have been chopped down, or Daredevil season 2 could have been chopped down a lot. In here, there's so much of this corporate stuff, and there's so much of Joy and Ward Meacham that I could just really not care at all about. And a lot of it doesn't come to anything. Like, there's a whole kind of subplot with Ward Meacham kind of fighting his internal demons that just kind of goes away at a certain point. It doesn't really get resolved. It's somebody comes in with a literal magic Deus Ex Machina to just take that subplot off the thing.
Sort of. I feel like it. I feel like that's okay. I'm going to say this. I feel like that is something they're leaving for season 2. That it's that at the end of this season, it's feel like that subplot is wrapped up, but season 2 comes around and oh no, it's not wrapped up.
Yeah,
because slight spoiler, it deals with addiction, like you said. It deals with addiction,
right?
And there is no wonder drug that just cures addiction immediately.
It's just they spend so much time with it, it has no payoff. And that's kind of one of the problems that I have, is that there's a lot of sub-characters in here. There's a kind of a big twist half or like 3/4 of the way through where it's like, oh my God, it turns out that X was Y the whole time. And by that point, I was just like, I don't fucking care. Like, it didn't hit. And I think that the reason for that is because I don't like Danny Rand in this series.
Okay.
I don't like the actor that's playing him. I mean, I feel like he's okay. He's acceptable. Like, a lot of people are just like, they have problems with him for a lot of different reasons. I find him, and it's incredibly possible. I don't really know that actor very well, so it's incredibly possible. The actor could be fine. It's just that the way that the character is rolled out, like, is he the immortal weapon? Because if he's not, he kind of sucks. Like, the Daredevil he has like a single kind of Batman-esque driven passion for things, right?
Yeah.
Jessica Jones is presented with Kilgrave. She's got her thing. Luke Cage is kind of figuring it out, but that's kind of the whole plot of Luke Cage. Danny Rand doesn't seem to know what the fuck he wants and what the fuck he wants to do. He seems to be like braggadocious about how powerful of a fighter he is, but then he keeps getting his ass kicked and isn't very good at fighting, it seems like. There's just a lot of problems that I had with that character where I don't understand. Like, if you wanted this to be like a corporate coming back to America thing, maybe do that. If you wanted it to be a slam bang action, kind of Asian, the hand, blah, blah, blah stuff, do that. But I just didn't like him. Like, he seemed to want stuff for no reason, and then when he got it, he didn't seem to do well with it. Like, he spends a lot of time trying to get back into the company, and then when he does, he seems to have zero interest whatsoever in being in the company.
That actually is one of my biggest issues. And I feel like when they actually reveal his reason for coming back, for leaving Kunlun and coming back to the modern world, which, funny enough, if you're not paying attention, you'll totally miss it because it's a throwaway line that also amounts to practically fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Which is the most annoying thing. And what really irritated me is that in the first episode, there is a line of dialogue that led me to believe that, like, because as a fan of the comics,
right,
there was a line of dialogue that I went, oh, is this what they're going to do? Oh, that'd be really cool. This would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, this is a case of me thinking of something better in my head,
right.
And then when they actually reveal it, it's like it's not as good as what was in my head, and me being a little bit upset about that.
Yeah.
But it's just like there's this whole, like, literally, you wouldn't even have to, like, in my mind, you wouldn't even have to change anything. All you have to change is that reason that he comes back.
Right.
And it fixes not all of the problems, but a good number of my personal issues with the show.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of my problems come, is that I feel like, a lot of people talked about how, about the actor. Like,
right.
There was that whole thing about, which we don't need to go into, but the whole thing about, like, they should have cast an Asian American instead of a white guy.
It's funny because I don't even know. I don't like.
Well, but I'm just.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
I'm just
Sorry.
saying, it's like I don't want to go into that because that's not what's important here.
Yeah.
That's like that may be important leading up to it and shaping people's opinions before the fact, whatever. But that's not the story that's being told here, and that's fine. If they had cast an Asian American, I would have been all for it. I would still been like, yeah, Iron Fist, cool. That, like, there was the whole thing about the guy who played the Drunken Master.
Yeah.
He originally was actually auditioning for the part of Danny Rand.
Right.
And apparently, up until Finn Jones got the part, he was the front runner for the part.
I would watch an entire series of that Drunken Master guy.
Oh, yeah. No.
He was like the best part of the entire show.
He was. His character is honestly, like, just oozing with charisma, even when he's not trying to be charismatic, when he's just talking.
He's got 10 minutes of on-screen time.
Yeah, and he's literally one of the most memorable characters in the entire fucking series.
Yeah.
Had they cast him, that would have been, I think that would have probably solved a lot of problems.
Sure.
But regardless of, and even if they had cast, like, another white dude, like a different Finn Jones, not someone other than Finn Jones.
Sure.
I don't feel like that would have solved a lot of the problems of the show. A lot of the problems of the show come from writing.
Well, just real briefly, if they had cast a white dude that was better at martial arts, that would have solved one problem of the fact that the fight scenes were the least impressive fight scenes in any of the Netflix shows.
Have you heard the reason why?
No.
Because apparently Finn Jones showed up on set with no training and learned the fight sequences the day before and only practiced for a few hours.
Yeah,
because
that's no.
He came out and said like, well, they only had me practice for a few hours because it was so, I was cast and then we were immediately filming. There wasn't enough time for me to train, and it could have been better. And a lot of people were like, oh, well, it must be the directors and the fight choreography's problems because they didn't make him. But then again, you had the actress who played Colleen Wing come out, and they were asking her about her fight scenes because her fight scenes are actually really good.
I got a thing to say about that, but yes.
I'm just saying her fight scenes are actually pretty good.
Yeah,
and she actually went, no, I know that we would usually learn the things before the day before, but like they would tell us we could go home after a couple hours. I would literally stay like 6 more hours until I knew I had the fight scene down.
Right.
Like, so it's like that makes me be like, how much did Finn Jones really want this part?
Well, also that the problem with that is that whenever the two of them fight, it's almost like when she fights by herself, she's fine. And when her and Danny Rand spar or have a little fight or whatever, it literally has to be like 25% slower because
I think it's because of him.
I think it is too. And that I think really because he's supposed to be this fucking super kung fu master.
I feel like Finn Jones put in as little effort as possible when they said, hey, we can continue training or you can take a break and go home and just come back tomorrow because we think you've got it down enough for the show. I think he went, all right, see you later.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else on the show went, no, I'm going to keep practicing.
I think that the martial arts are the least interesting. The other thing is that no, I'm not going to talk about that because it's potentially a spoiler, and I don't really want to go into it. But here's another thing that I'm really it is really burning my biscuits. I am real sick of shows where everybody's got a gun or a sword or a knife or a claw or a bladed weapon or a bunch of axes or whatever, and it is completely bloodless. Like, I don't know how you have a sword fight between two people that ends in, like, a cut on the arm and, whatever. Like, Colleen Wing's character has a sword, and, like, half the time she's just hitting people with the scabbard or the back of it or having a sword fight and then punching somebody in the face. And I don't need this series to be oozing with blood, but it starts to get redonkulous the 12th time that you've got a bunch of people with axes and swords and knives and shit, and nobody's getting any. I mean, Daredevil season 1, that dude got the shit beat. Like, he almost died 12 times.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And everybody in here, there are more cuts on the top of the arm in this series than in anything I've ever seen.
I will say, and again, because, we're pretty much just shitting all over the show at this point. Like I said, I did like it. Now, I think I liked it. Like, if you're a fan of, say, CW's Arrow, you might like this because it's pretty much the same plot.
Yeah.
Guy gets thought to be dead, learns some ancient whatever thing that makes him super powerful. He comes back from the, and says, hey, I'm not dead. And everyone's like, oh, you're a wealthy billionaire. You should reclaim your company or come back and work in the company. Sure. While he's also got this other persona in which he has this other thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
And he has to protect the city. It's the same fucking plot.
Yeah.
So if you liked Arrow, like CW's Arrow, if you actually like that show, you will probably most likely like Iron Fist because it's very, very similar. It's like they looked at Arrow and went, we're going to make that for Marvel.
Yeah.
And again, that's a little bit more of my problem because that's not what this show should have been. But it also feels like because they knew ahead of time that people were going to be upset by the whole white savior thing. It also feels like the writers went, well, what about Iron Fist doesn't have to do with the whole white savior thing? Oh, well, the business side, he's a corporate person. Let's just spend most of the season talking about that because people can't get upset about that, and then we'll just sprinkle in some fighting here and there.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it very much. I mean, I got bored like 2/3 of the way through and just started playing games while I was watching it and then kind of keeping one eye on it. So I don't know. I feel like all of the rest of the shows had stronger people and stronger stories.
I will say I felt this show had stronger supporting characters and stronger, I guess, well, not really villains, but
I know what you're talking about.
But not really villains per se, but just stronger enemies.
Yeah.
Than any of the other Marvel shows. And the problem is that the lead was written so poorly and acted not necessarily acted, but just like, because here's the thing, my problem with Finn Jones, as far as how he's acting, not the fighting capabilities, but like him on screen acting.
Right.
I don't know if he's being told be stoic,
right,
but don't be too charismatic. We want you to be stoic, but act.
Right.
Because there's a fine line between stoic and wooden.
Yeah.
And
Keanu Reeves does it perfectly.
Well, Keanu Reeves, it took him a while to figure it out.
Sure.
He eventually figured it out.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line. But so I wonder if it's because they told him be stoic and then don't be anything but stoic.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't know how to do that at the same time as also being charismatic and having like a personality. Or if he's just a fucking terrible actor. Because, again, all I know him from is Game of Thrones. I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Right, he was in Game of Thrones.
I don't watch. I've never watched Game of Thrones. That's also the problem. My problem is I feel like they cast him not because he was the best person for the part,
right?
And because they went, he was the star in Game of Thrones. We can put his name out there and say he was in Game of Thrones, and that's going to get people's eyes on it.
Yeah, maybe
because Game of Thrones is fucking killer right now. You know,
but, wait, hold on. I want to go back to the villain thing because I actually disagree with you on that because Wilson Fisk, Kilgrave, and the Punisher were all greater villains than anybody that was in Iron Fist, in my opinion.
And that's kind of why I said that they don't really have like a central villain. Like there isn't really a centralized.
Well, they do. They just pulled it from another. That's the other problem is that they're building on their bad guy structure is built off of bad guys from another one of the series, and so it's almost like, well, we don't even get the story point of discovering this organization for the first time because we've already know about them. Also, I would just like to say, I fucking think that Rosario Dawson is the best. She should not have been in the show. She had nothing to do in the entire fucking show. She had something to do in the other shows. So I don't know. It seems like a mess. It didn't super hold my interest. That was the main problem that I had.
Yeah.
In fact, I had Jason over here to record Mass Effect Andromeda, and I was like, Jason, tell me why Iron Fist is good because I don't like this guy. He seems like a Batman who doesn't know what he's doing or like isn't very good at what he's doing. I don't know. There's just a lot of character motivations in there that didn't jive well with me.
Yeah.
So
but I felt like going to the point of like all the side characters, like I thought Colleen Wing, her character was pretty badass. I liked her character. I thought out of all of the characters on the show, she was more of like I felt the show was more about her than it was about Iron Fist.
Yeah.
Which take that as a negative or a positive, but I really liked her character. Rosario Dawson for what she was in there, like we said, her character didn't need to be there as much as she was.
No, not at all.
But she was good for what she was.
Just a really stupid line of dialogue with them about this thing that I'm just like, there's a thing in comic books about superheroes don't kill people, but like in Daredevil season 2, they had their traditional, the Punisher shows you that like knocking out criminals doesn't work because blah blah they'll get out of jail and they'll come back and do stuff.
They don't have anything to do with Punisher. They don't know that. They don't. That's not there.
I know. It's like when you set your evil villains up to be like the most evil villains that just do all of this evil shit and have no scruples whatsoever, and then they're like, all right, well, let's go kill the head of the evil organization, and another character is like, no, you can't, life is precious, and it's like, it's just a really half-baked argument that doesn't appeal well to me.
Again,
anyway,
I think Carrie-Anne Moss as Sharon Hogarth is fucking awesome in the show.
She was my Wilson Fisk in this one, where whenever she came on, I was like, more of her, please, more of her.
She was really
less
good.
of everybody else.
I felt like the guy that plays fucking what is his name? The father of
I know who you're talking about. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. He was good. People who've seen it know what we're talking about.
Him as an actor was good.
Yeah.
And I saw someone that was complaining about certain aspects of his character, which I actually thought were totally like at no point did I think anything he did was really like super questionable or out of character for the character that he set up.
Right.
I really kind of reveled in scenes where he would show up and just be who he was.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't really see him as, and it's also weird because I don't see him as a supporting character, and I also don't see him as a villain, and I don't see him as a.
He was the most interesting character in the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was kind of like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And I also, and it's just like I said, there are some things that I thought were really interesting and really well done. There were some things that I thought that were done really stupid that I can't mention because not because of things, but like other things that we haven't even talked about that are totally spoilers that I don't even want to mention.
Right.
Go into because they are totally spoilers about the ending of it that I think are kind of head scratching. Like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I do feel like some of the problems would have been solved by casting someone else other than Finn Jones. I feel like Finn Jones was the weakest actor in the show.
Yeah.
Whether that be because he's a bad actor or whether it just be because the director fucking directed him terribly. Regardless.
It's hard to the whole thing has
I do feel like
pacing.
someone being directed in a bad way can still turn it around.
Sure.
Now, and I'm not saying he had to be an Asian American. I'm not saying he had to be white. He could have been a black guy. I don't care. It could be anybody.
Right.
As long as it's the best actor for the role. And I just don't feel that Finn Jones was that actor.
Yeah, me neither.
And if you change that actor to someone who actually probably already knew how to fight to a degree, or B was willing to actually put in the effort to learn his fight scenes.
Sure.
And then also change that one little plot point that I hinted at earlier. Literally, they put it out in the first fucking episode, like in a throwaway line of dialogue that made you go, "Oh, this is probably for anyone who's a fan of." Fraction and Brubaker's Iron Fist probably thought the exact same thing that I thought when I heard that line uttered.
Yeah.
And then when it turns out that's not the case, it's like, well, fuck.
I would have. I would have overhauled the entire show. Different main actor, cut half the episodes, change the villain entirely to somebody different. Cut Rosario Dawson. I would have cut Colleen Wing. I didn't feel like she added anything to it. I would have picked either a kung fu martial arts fight and adventure with an enemy or a corporate thing. If you want to make a corporate drama, I've seen corporate dramas that were very compelling. Bring in fucking Aaron Spelling to write you a goddamn Iron Fist where it's all about him taking over his corporation, like him and his lawyer. I've seen that movie. I've seen a good movie about that, right? Like, you could make a compelling story where Iron Fist doesn't have to punch anybody. Maybe at the very end, he's fucking like at a boardroom and he fucking slams his hand down on the table and it starts glowing and breaks the table. I don't care. All I care about is that it's a good story, and this suffered from everything that every other Netflix show has suffered from, in my opinion, times 10, like in spades. It was unfocused. The fighting never had me thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? Is somebody going to get hurt? Like in that first season of Daredevil, they did the thing where they hurt him enough times that I was legitimately, like, I could suspend my disbelief to the point of like, oh, what's going to happen to Daredevil? Like, is he going to get really fucked up this time? But here it was like nobody got hurt. Like,
maybe the entirety of the production was rushed, not just the well, I didn't have time to learn my fight scenes, but it was the entirety of everything was rushed, the writing, the everything, because I felt like a lot of the problems were like they were what's the word I'm looking for?
Chocolate.
Like almost exponentially increased. Like, so it's like exacerbated, whatever you want to say it. But those problems were bigger in this show than they were in the other shows.
Yeah.
Because they maybe didn't spend as much time as they should actually writing. And the other problem is like, what was the showrunner? I was talking to a friend of ours, Randy Lander.
Yeah.
The showrunner, the biggest thing prior to Iron Fist that he was credited for was like season 2 or season 3 of Dexter. And it was a season that was
blech.
But it was a season that when you look at it, wasn't bad. Wasn't anywhere near the best season of Dexter, but it wasn't bad. And like, if you actually look at this guy's career of every show he's ever been like the head showrunner for, or the season he was the head showrunner for, that's been the description of his show or his season. Wasn't bad, wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. And that's what the problem is here. They should have got someone who is someone who does fight scenes, someone who knows specifically that is also familiar with the source material. I read an interview with that same fucking showrunner who was like, well, Iron Fist has no power. powers. He's not a superhero. He just knows kung fu. He knows how to punch things. He doesn't have a superpower, so it's really hard to find where this character lies. It's like, motherfucker, no, he doesn't. He does have powers. He has the motherfucking Iron Fist.
Yep.
Go fuck yourself.
All right, we're going to move on to the news, but I have one last thing, one final thing to say, and I don't know if you'll agree with me about this or not. Hoodies, stop it. Stop it. Every one of these motherfuckers, from Daredevil to Jessica Jones to Luke Cage to Iron Fist, when they want to do a thing and be kind of sneaky about it, they put on a black hoodie. Like, they almost put on the same black hoodie. I think Jessica Jones's was gray, and Luke Cage's was dark gray.
Well, Luke Cage had very numerous numbers of them.
Right. But I'm just like, motherfucker, there are items of clothing that can hide your appearance that are not a hoodie.
To
one
quote
of those,
Amanda, the hoodie is the modern-day trench coat and fedora.
No. It's ridiculous because I went and looked online and I could find screen grabs from every Netflix show where they're trying to be sneaky with a hoodie up. And I'm just like, fuck your black hoodie. Like, I'm not saying that nobody can have it. It's just that when every one of your protagonists is fucking black hoodieing it up.
Well, yeah, my big thing is, why are they so afraid of costumes? Why are all of them? Like, Daredevil got it, but it almost was begrudgingly.
They didn't even, but see, oh God, we got to move on. We got to move on. They didn't even do, at least in Luke Cage, when he comes out of the thing, he's got the thing on his head, and like for a moment, he's in the dumb Power Man costume, right? This guy, he never puts on, like, he could.
I honestly feel like they did that because they didn't want him to be compared to Daredevil's first costume from the Daredevil season.
Okay, well, make him like to wear V-necks that are really deep that show off the top of his tattoo on his chest.
But anyways, moving on.
Yes, let's move on because we've done enough complaining about.
But I really like the show. I'm going to continue to say that. Despite all my complaining, I actually liked the show. I thought it was okay.
I did not. I thought it was a waste of my time, and but it was.
If you like Arrow, you'll probably like it.
It was free on Netflix, so I can't complain too much about it.
Not free. You're paying for Netflix.
Well, yeah, if you got Netflix, I mean, what's that? $4 a month? Come on, that's free. Anyway, all right, so let's stop complaining about Iron Fist and start complaining about Mass Effect.
Oh shit! I have yet to play this game.
Twist. Well, what we're talking about today is really not as much that as it is a few other things. So first, let's run down the line of. Let's run down a short chronology of a thing, and then we can talk about the thing that thing is based on.
All right, let's do it.
Mass Effect Andromeda came to the early access, the EA Origin program or whatever, and you could play it for 10 hours. We had reported on that previously. During that time period, people were taking screen grabs, put them online, show that apparently there's like bugs in the animation system, and the facial animation in particular has been called out as being very wooden. Now, I've looked at some of these. Some of these, like some of them are straight up bugs, right?
Yeah.
Where somebody's in a sitting animation, they go walking off the back. Yeah. And part of what I wanted to talk about in this particular segment is that with the ability that we have now to just instantaneously make a GIF and put it on Twitter or put something on YouTube or share something, right, directly from your phone, like, oh, shit, you pull out your phone, you record it, boom, it's on social media in a second. We do have a kind of a weird sampling error thing, I feel like, where we are seeing – I've seen the same, like, 10 little GIFs videos, but when you balance that up against – who knows – like the people, Jason and I recorded 2 dojos, nothing happened, right? Nobody. I mean, granted, our character was a fucking monster, right? But nobody was walking around the wrong way. You know, nobody was doing stupid things with their arms. There was no serious animation, graphical glitches or whatever that we saw during that time period. So I have to wonder. There are plenty of games that have bugs, right? So. If this is now, I don't know because I haven't really dug into the game for reasons that will become obvious in the near future, but I've always thought that the Mass Effect games had very wooden animation in them.
Yeah,
I don't know if this is more wooden or less wooden than previously, but they've never been very expressive with their individual character animation.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of times Shepard kind of is, or Shepard kind of was, but there are a lot of other people. And then you get into the aliens where it's like, who the fuck knows if Rex is acting very wooden. But this led to, so somebody online there's a woman online. Her Twitter account had her listed as the main like facial animator for Mass Effect. After this happened, somebody was like, "Hey, she's the one who did it. Get her!" And apparently, the internet piled on to the point where BioWare was like, "This person was not the lead animator of anything. Fucking cut it out.
Back off."
Which I'm just going to say, fucking cut it out. Like if the facial animation is fucked up, I don't know. I mean, I've seen videos, but I haven't seen any like truly damning evidence. I've seen some stuff that looks a little sketchy, but like with Fallout or Skyrim or any huge ass RPG,
yeah.
I'm never expecting everything to be tip top 100%. Now, people will throw The Witcher 3 out there, and The Witcher 3 is exceptional. So I would say that if you're basing your evaluation of the game on its animations, that Witcher 3 is probably better than Mass Effect, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a problem with that, I feel like, first off, you should be addressing your concerns to BioWare or EA, not a specific person.
Yeah, I think another former BioWare employee who did animations basically came out and said, first of all, it's not a failure. Whoever the lead facial animation designer is, it's not a failure of that one person. It's a failure of the entire team.
Right.
And so you shouldn't be singling out one person. You should actually be singling out the entire team of the. And that's not to say you should be attacking them on Twitter or whatever, but you should voice your concern like, hey, BioWare, you as a company failed in this regard.
Well, when Mass Effect 3 came out and people were upset about the ending, they addressed their concerns to BioWare.
Yeah.
For the most part. I guess there was that one woman that kind of got that said, "Oh, I'd love to make a game where you don't even have to play the game," or whatever, that people were all pissy about. But like, people were sending like the cupcakes and stuff to BioWare. They were addressing their concerns to BioWare because that's what you do. Like going after any one individual person, you don't know whether or not the blame is theirs. You don't know whether they have the ability to fix what you're trying to fix. So in a lot of ways, you could just be like, regardless of, I'm not trying to invalidate a person's anger or the fact that they want something to be fixed. I think that you should fix games that are broken, right? That's why I keep talking about No Man's Sky. But if you're addressing all of your complaints to somebody who literally can't fix the problem that you're complaining about, then you're not doing anything. You're wasting their time, your time, and making a big ruckus in the meantime. But another thing that I feel like comes up in this is the No Man's Sky question of, okay, I haven't gone through this yet. I don't know. But if this is a problem, do we hold the quality of a game accountable for its day one release in an era where a game 6 months to a year from now can be significantly different from the way that it was on release? See Final Fantasy 15 with all the things that they're adding in over time, right? So you literally have two different games. You have Final Fantasy 15 when it releases, and you have Final Fantasy 15 a year from now when all the DLC is out, all those things that they want to put back into the game and all those things, etc. The Witcher 2 is a perfect example. The Witcher 2 had issues when it launched, and CD Projekt Red spent a long time. They added a whole new tutorial section in. They added a bunch of different stuff. They kept adding new stuff to the game. So we live in an era where a game, as it is originally released, I don't know. I have concerns. It's like when a Bethesda game comes out and it's riddled with bugs, do you instantly give it a 4 out of 10, or do you wait 6 months down the line to see whether they fix those problems and give it a 9 out of 10, right? Like,
I actually, this is one of the few times where I actually like the way that iTunes does their software for games, where it's basically they say, you review, like, it comes out, it's released, this is version 1.0.
Yeah.
You review it as version 1.0. The game sucks, rate it bad.
Right.
Then they release version 2.0 or 3.0, or 2 years down the line, you're at version 7.6.
Right.
Those reviews, you can still read those reviews that were for 1.0, but it's not counting those anymore. It's counting version 7.6 now.
Right.
Like, that's what it's looking at, like, review wise. This is, and I actually appreciate that, because then you can actually look and go, okay, well, if version 1.0 was garbage and version 6, like that, you can look at it over time.
Right.
That, like, I feel like that is you should, when the game first comes out and it's broken, yes, you should hold the game to account, the company or the game accountable for that, because no one wants a shitty game. And also telling them that their game is fucked up is going to entice them to, hopefully,
if they get a bad reputation, then they're going to
fix their shit.
Yeah.
That's what you hope, is that you're saying, hey, this is a problem and it needs to be addressed, and you hope that they address it.
Right.
And then when they do address it, you can then go back in and go, you know what, you addressed it, thank you.
Yeah. I think that second part is the main issue that we face a lot of times in this current day of gaming, is that there's a lot of outrage when the game comes out and there's a thing that's a problem with it, but there's no revision. Like, nobody's going to run a news story in 6 months. Fucking Polygon isn't going to have a front page story like, hey, everybody, they fixed everything in Mass Effect Andromeda. It's just a puff piece where they're like, hey, everybody, all the bugs have been fixed and everything's great now and it's one of the better games.
Actually,
and it's
they do
blah,
that.
Blah, blah. Really? Because I tend to just see...
They've done that with No Man's Sky and a few other games. Like,
yeah.
They'll for example, Destiny. The Destiny. They've every time like a new expansion has come out, they've re-edited, released a new review, or
but that's different, because those are content up. They can talk about that in the form of a content update. What I'm talking about is if BioWare goes in without a content update and fixes all the facial animations in the next 3 months, are they going to run a story that says facial animations fixed? Because they run those stories for No Man's Sky because...
I have seen that. Like,
okay.
It doesn't always happen, but
okay.
I have seen that with a few games. Like, I'm trying to remember the game specifically, but I remember there was one game that I want to say it was Polygon, just raked to the coals, and it wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, there was new expansions or content update or whatever. Right. But it was a thing where the developer actually went in and fixed it, and then they actually published the review, same review, and said at the very top, like, what follows is the original review. If you want to see the revised review, please click here, and it takes you lower down on the review and goes, on this date they released an update that fixed this
Good.
and this problem that we had with this game. Here's our feelings on it now, and then they added to it at the bottom.
Good.
So some companies will do that,
right.
Some review websites, but they don't always do it with every game, because obviously you can't, like you say, it's not, just because a game releases a content update, you gotta wait, is it enough of a content update to go back and actually dedicate your time and your website space to that, or like for video content,
right?
Or do you want to focus on this new hotness that's out,
right,
that you need to get in front of?
Well, it's also a thing where I feel like some of the major platforms don't, like Steam. I feel like that's one of the reasons why Steam now has like the I feel like just about everything on Steam has 2 review scores, like the original one, and then like the later, the most recent ones, like where it's like mostly negative and then like mostly positive, like above that. And like, I mean, places like Metacritic don't update. I want to, again, I talk about this all the time, but I feel like, okay, I understand using the thumbs down on Steam as a way to, again, pressure developers into fixing things that you feel like are an issue. But I also feel like it's on the person reviewing that thing to then, if they fix that, then in a timely fashion, you need to go back and reevaluate whether your thumbs down is still a thumbs down and change to a thumbs up if they address the thing. And I feel like a lot of times, not for major websites, but just kind of like internet feeling in general, right? That you get the big negative hit when a game comes out and all these things are messed up, but you never get the second half of it. You never get people, or 2 years from now, you'll have people that are like, you know what? I went back and played Mass Effect Andromeda after that Game of the Year edition when it had all the DLC and all those updates and shit that was a good game. I remember when it came out, people were all pissed off. Because here's the thing. I actually think that Mass Effect 3, if you have all the DLC and you have the Citadel DLC and you have the Leviathan DLC with the updated ending, is not nearly as much of a kick in the teeth as it was when it first came out. Because the Leviathan DLC foreshadows the ending, and the Citadel DLC gives you a way to have a big party and say goodbye to all your best friends in Mass Effect before you go to the end of the game, right?
Yeah.
So that whole thing, along with giving you the go fuck yourself ending where you just everybody dies for no good reason, I love that ending where you just tell the Star Child to go fuck yourself, and then it's just like a dead Earth with like an underground transmitter that's like, hey, everybody, there used to be people here. We told the Star Child to fuck off. Here's all of our data for everything that we've ever learned. Maybe you'll do better this time. Who knows? Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I don't know. It brings up in me this idea that more and more in the past, you bought an NES game, you brought it home, you put it in. What you were evaluating was all that game was ever going to be.
Yeah.
Nowadays, things are much more variable, and I also wonder that the other problem that I have with this is I was reading a Steam review for another game that came out this week where people were pissed off about no mouse support, that only had gamepad support for the PC version. The other problem that I have is that all of this facial animation stuff has become so loud that I haven't heard all that much about if it's actually a good game. You're talking about one aspect. Like, let's say I don't care if the character expressions are wooden.
Yeah.
The fuckers in Dark Souls don't even move their lips when they talk. They don't emote. They don't do shit. They just fucking talk to you, right? Like, what about outside of that? What about the action? What about the exploration or side quests and stuff? Like, a lot of the times, the internet gets so focused on the frame rate cap in Mafia 3 that they forget that then we lose the thread of, well, okay, if I don't care about that, is this actually a good game? And that's, I don't know. I don't know what I'm actually saying here. It's just something that gets kind of irritating to me because, I don't know. It's an honest question that I have about, can you evaluate a game on the day that it comes out? Because Bethesda games are shit on the day they come out, but they tend to be pretty good games over the long term. They tend to get fixed, except for the PlayStation 3 version of Skyrim. So I don't know. Next up, so it appears this is a very touchy week of news and different things to talk about. We got no spoilers on Iron Fist. We got, we didn't even get into the whole, like, BioWare is a bunch of SJWs that won't let me I can't make my character white enough. I don't know. But there's a guy, JonTron, right? This guy,
JonTron. Yeah.
John has talked to me about this. I don't really watch this guy. I think I watched a couple of his videos like a long time ago, who apparently had a Q&A or a thing on Twitch
on Twitch with a guy who basically has Twitch debates with people.
Right. Said some stuff that is not great. And so the publishers of the upcoming ukulele game, Playtronic, have taken, he was going to be like a DLC character or something, and they have...
Well, he was going to be a voice in the actual game.
Oh, okay.
Like one of the voices in the game.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah.
Which I feel is perfectly the prerogative of Playtronic.
Yeah.
We talk...
well, I understand why they did it, because they even said, they're like, we don't condone or we don't agree with him and we don't disagree with him. We don't have any opinion on what he said.
Right.
However, we feel like the visibility that he's getting because of these would put a bad light on our game.
Sure.
So we're going to remove him from our game so that people will then be able to judge our game based solely on our game.
Sure.
Without looking at what he said elsewhere and thinking that we also that he represents us.
Sure.
Which is totally within their prerogative as a company.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, it also kind of comes back to
condone or condemn. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was what you're looking for. When we talked about PewDiePie a little while back, of just like, you're more than welcome to say whatever you want to on the internet. Start a blog, get on Twitch. Fucking, there's so many free spaces where if you get a mic and a thing, you can do whatever you want to. You can start your ifuckspaghettiblog.tumblr.com.
Start a Twitter.
Right.
I'm the president of the United States.
Right.
Continue to be on Twitter.
But just because you can say whatever you want to doesn't mean that
you're free of repercussions.
There's not any repercussions, because somebody like Playtronic now does have to deal with the fact that if there's a person who finds what this person says, like, we don't hear, Nolan North doesn't go on my politics podcast to talk about what he thinks about healthcare, right?
Yeah.
He just goes and does his voice acting. So the problem comes when you get somebody to do voice acting, and then if they go do and say something nutty, then yeah, that's going to be then a thing that is over your game, where you just want to make a fucking video game about a lizard and some shit, right? Like, you don't want to deal with people who are political coming in and just getting all up in the thing. So I could totally see why you would end up dropping, somebody who was a hot potato,
Yeah.
like if I was a voice in a video game and then I came on and you know, if I actually made spaghettifucker.tumblr.com like live so everybody could see it, you know, then want to take me out of their game because they don't want a guy who fucks spaghetti in their game, I would understand that. I'd be okay with that. I'd be like,
and you look at him and be like, you knew what you were getting into when you hired me.
What did you think the spaghetti in my contract was for? Ah,
no, but yeah. As far as like what he said, yeah, whatever.
I don't want to. I tried as much as possible to kind of keep that stuff off of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's becoming increasingly difficult.
I unsubbed to his YouTube, but that's just me.
All right. So next, let's see. We're doing pretty good. So this is the last. This is another one that there's a strangely touchy undertone in this trailer. This is the trailer for Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. This is the Wonder Girl trailer that's on the PlayStation Network. Now, I hadn't actually I never played Wonder Boy back in the day.
I knew it was a game, but I didn't know like what platform it was on, or I never played it. I'd never even seen it, but I'd heard of it.
But it was a Master Drive game, as I understand it.
Yeah,
and that's why I never played it.
Yeah,
and then. So apparently this is a remake of the first game or the second game or something.
I don't know.
But it's basically kind of just a little side scroller. I got to say that like the animation for this looks just adorable and awesome. There's all hand animated and they're running around. Apparently you can play in either version. You can play it in the 8-bit version or you can play it in like this kind of new version where it's all these little hand animated sprites. And you can play as the Wonder Girl if you want. And I think this looks great.
Yeah, it looks fun. It looks cute. I totally think it's a great thing. You know, I think it's something that people should play.
Yep. Now, I made the mistake of going to the comments on the YouTube page.
Of course you did.
And I did notice a number of people who were like, why is there even an ability to play a girl? The game's called Wonder Boy, not Wonder People. Oh, my God, shut up. I'm just fucking chill. You don't have to. Just chill. Just everybody fucking calm down.
Yeah. But you knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. This is why we can't have nice things, internet. I've just started moving away from the internet in large chunks. Like I'll go do some research for some news or whatever, but I don't like the internet anymore because everything and whether I'm pro or con on any issue, everybody's got that shit turned all the way up to 11 all the time, and I just want to play my video games.
I can't not be on the internet because I need to know when they release a trailer for Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh yeah,
or announce the release date for the Gorillaz' new album.
Sure,
I need to know all those things.
Sure,
and you know them as soon as possible.
Yeah,
so
I understand. All right, let's talk a little Nintendo.
Hey,
let's talk about the Switch. So apparently. There's an issue with the Switch that has been widely reported where the left Joy-Con will lose synchronization with the television.
Yes.
If you're too far away or if it's too close to certain other things like...
Or if you put your hand in front of it.
I have had this problem when I'm sitting on the couch playing on my TV downstairs. When I'm sitting up here and I've got the Switch like a few feet away from me, it's never been a problem there. It's mostly been when I've been about 8 feet away and my setup downstairs, the Switch ends up being right next to my wireless router, which is probably where the problem is occurring.
Yeah.
All right, so Nintendo apparently released a statement saying that this is due to a manufacturing issue that has been sorted. It didn't affect everything. They think they've got a workaround. And if you feel like you're having a problem, they got a number you can call, and they'll have you send it in, and they'll send you another one.
Have you heard what the fix is when they repair it?
No,
It's a small piece of square styrofoam.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like it's literally a piece of square foam that they put right next to a specific piece that apparently fixed like totally like everyone who has gotten it and it like so apparently someone had the issue and had opened his up and then put it in and then called Nintendo and they said that they'd still replace it.
Okay.
And so he got it and then he opened it up again to see what they did and saw that little square foam piece was there and then was like, all right, well, whatever, closed it back up and was like, yeah, no, I've never had the issue since. I don't know why that foam thing works, but it does, so fuck it.
Yeah. This is good. This is I talk a lot of crap about Nintendo. I feel like I want to point out when they do something good, and this is a good thing. Fix your shit, Nintendo.
And they said that all future things are hopefully gonna not have that issue.
Yep. Speaking of future Switches, this is another one that I gotta say kudos to you, Nintendo, because they are doubling production on the Nintendo Switch.
You're damn right they are.
So let's see. They're increasing the production of their new console for the next fiscal year, producing 16 million units. Great, because if there's one thing that see, what's weird about this is that a move like this makes me think that the shortage of units that Nintendo, the whole thing with Nintendo short-running consoles, is not actually a cunning scheme on their part to drive up interest by having a scarcity of consoles. That it's actually just incompetence or an inability to be able to read the market to see how many things they need to produce.
Yeah. I also think it's also them worrying that they don't want to like have an issue, a Wii U issue where they have consoles that aren't selling.
Right.
And this is a kind of a gamble because it has elements of the Wii U, being that it's a tablet.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, people were really excited about the Wii U, and then that excited disappeared very quickly. Let's kind of take it slow and see what people say after the first.
Yeah. So no, but this is good. This is good. I like it. Thumbs up to you, Nintendo. Do that. Do more. Let me buy a thing and less not let me buy a thing, and also make more NES classics because
I think they did.
Did they?
Yeah.
I gotta go check. All right, so we got a couple more things, and then we are going to take a break. First up, John, I know that you will be as excited as humanly possible that there is a Ghostbusters VR game for the PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
Where apparently you get to walk around the firehouse and the little ghost from the logo talks to you. It's Patton Oswalt, you were telling me.
Yeah. Apparently it's Patton Oswalt. Now I've heard that it's only like what is it, $6.99?
Yeah.
So it's about $7, but it's only apparently like 15 minutes worth of gameplay. But
$2 a minute.
Yeah.
No.
But it's like you can do like a bunch of stuff in it.
Yeah.
But like you get to capture Slimer who escapes from the thing, and apparently there is like this is an episodic thing where they are going to release more episodes as time goes on.
Okay.
From what I heard in the interview with Ivan Reitman, it sounded really weird. It kind of made it sound like they don't have like when someone asked was like, "Oh, so what are you going to be able to do in the next episode?" And they're like, "Well, we haven't decided.
Okay.
Like all we did was we made this, and we're going to see if there's a market for it, and if a lot of people buy it, we'll do another one."
Okay.
And if
that's cool.
not a lot of people buy it, then we won't do another one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that the content's a good thing, and that's just fine.
I just got paid as we were recording this. I got paid, so I'm going to go home and buy it.
Good. You can tell us all about it. And last but not least, the internet. You're breaking my heart. John, they're breaking my heart.
What did they do this time?
Oh, my goodness. Nothing. They did something great.
Oh, is this the statue?
They made a Solera Vestora. They made two different Solera Vestora statues.
Technically, there's three.
There's actually technically three, yes.
But it's one of them is the same statue, just with accessories.
Yes. So they got one that has Solera, and he's praising the sun, and he's got the sword and his shield, and he's got his, like, it's a nice little thing.
That's if you pre-order it. If you don't pre-order it, you don't get the sword and the shield.
Okay.
But it's the same statue.
Yeah, but he's just doing the praise the sun motion. But then they've got another one that actually has LEDs in it that light up, and he's like clear, and it's orange, like he's being summoned into your game. I want that thing so fucking bad.
$500.
It is like $500. I cannot. That is a PlayStation VR. Like, would you rather have a PlayStation VR, a Nintendo Switch, or a statue of Solera on your desk that lights up? And you know what? It's a hard decision, but it doesn't matter because I don't have $500 for anything. So, but oh my God, I want this thing so bad.
I saw this and I was like, oh God, I wonder if Jeff's gonna want to talk about this.
Oh, it makes me sad. I want it.
Praise the sun, Jeff. Praise the sun.
I'm gonna go praise everything. Yeah, it's $369 for the Praise the Sun edition.
Yeah, because that one doesn't come with a sword and shield, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but it looks...
And they even have a YouTube video so you can see how big it is.
Yeah, it's huge, man. It's a big old Solera, and he's standing on your desk, he's doing stuff. I want it!
But it's not like it's permanently in that pose. Like it's a statue.
Oh, yeah. It's not a
Because I've actually like read things where it's like, it's a figure, and I'm like, no, that's a statue.
No.
A figure is something different.
Well, it's made by this First Four Figures thing, so I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But man, it's big. It's super big. You can take the hands off. You can put different hands on. Yeah, it's a nice thing. I want it. I don't know. Maybe the other thing is they've had giant ones of these before. Like they had one for Sif that I thought was really cool. I feel like they've had an Artorias one before, but I like this one because Celeste, my boy, and I praise the sun every day like everybody else. So
drinks a lot of Sunny D.
I do. I'm grossly incandescent.
Yes.
If only I could be so grossly incandescent. Just breaking my heart all over the place. So anyway, that's the news, and we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we are going to answer some questions, so stick around. And, oh, my God, is that the actual Artorias? That thing is so big! Look at that Artorias. He's so huge. I mean, like, okay, maybe make a $40 version that's, like, tiny, and I'll put that on my desk instead. I don't have the amount of money that it takes. Anyway, sorry. We just went to the one where the light-up one is. I fucking love it. Thank you, everybody. We'll be right back. I'm sorry. Solaris got me all flustered. We'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned. We'll be back. And we're back. All right, John, you ready for some questions?
Yes.
Okay, good. Mail at RageSide.com is the email address to send your questions into. And our first question this week comes in from Will. Will says, hello, Jeff and John. Here's a question you might find interesting for the next podcast. What are some of your favorite examples of a game that required you to go out of your way to figure out the story of that game? I've been playing a stealth game called Shadowin recently. While the level design is repetitive and some mechanics are laughably clumsy, one thing that the game does do that I love is the way that you can only figure out the whole story by listening to idle conversations between NPCs and dialogue snippets during loading screens. Even though I do enjoy more linear storytelling in games, such as Half-Life and many other FPSs, I personally love the aha moment when I figure out why characters are doing what they do. So what are some of your favorite examples of a game that required you to do some digging to uncover the full story, whether it be through side quests, NPC, dialogue, or some other method? Here's to the Cocaine Princesses, Will.
Jeff, I'm going to put a restriction on this question.
I know. I already know it.
No saying Dark Souls.
I know.
Or Bloodborne.
I know. That's the obvious answer, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about stuff that's not that,
But totally those games.
Totally those games, yeah. Totally those games, etc. One recent example that I feel like actually does this, but in a way that I don't really like all that much, is Hitman.
Okay.
And you
love Hitman?
Of all the taffy and rainbows and unicorns that I've talked about Hitman, one of the problems of the episodic nature of Hitman is that if you're really invested, if you're really looking into the storyline, it requires it. That's one of the problems when you have a story-heavy game, a dense story game that comes out episodically, is that you may not remember everything from the previous episode. Yeah. And one of the things about Hitman that I've never really talked about that's kind of a downside to it is that there are a lot of character motivations that you only find out by walking around and listening to characters to have conversations. Well, they'll talk about things, and then you have to remember who that guy was from episode 1. That they were talking about this guy, and he's now the target in episode 4. But then you talked about him in episode 3 and this thing that he did in the background, to the point where I didn't really get all of the story that was in there. I was actually there's a Reddit lorester that was doing story recaps when every new episode came out that would basically go through everything that we had learned up until that point. And I just read those because I was more interested in killing people than I was in listening to them for hours on end. But that's another game that does that I feel like is good at doing that. I don't know. Do you have anything that's coming to mind?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the games I play are pretty straightforward,
pretty linear.
At least as far as the story is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty here's the story. It's not something you have to go hunt and look for. It's expected you're gonna find this because you're playing the game,
right? I feel like there's some RPGs that do that fairly well, or that do not so much the main story but kind of world building in between, some of the conversations that you would overhear running down the street in games like Watch Dogs 2. Or I was just looking at Imager, and I was looking at a big thing that reminded me that Skyrim does a lot of that, where you got people talking about what's going on in the game world that kind of reflects it. this isn't really like the main story, but I've always just completely and totally adored the fact that, and I don't know why they didn't do it. I mean, I guess they did it in Fallout 4, but in Fallout 3, I fucking love Three Dog talking about when you listen to the radio and he comes on, he starts talking about the things that you're doing in the world and how like he lifted the spirits of the people in the wasteland. Three Dog, ow, and like I really like that as well. I'm trying to think of other good examples of kind of indirect or optional storytelling. I feel like a lot of that stuff comes through. We were talking about Mass Effect in the early game. You could play Mass Effect 2 without doing any of the loyalty missions.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't know anything about any of the people that you're talking to. I know there's also examples like with Destiny and with Halo where it's the wrong direction, in my opinion, of hiding your story too deeply in stuff, and even not just to show that I'm not completely just a Bungie hater. A lot of Mass Effect stuff is hidden in the codex, where you really need, like, if you really want to get everything about kind of why things in the universe work the way,
and
you really need to go read that stuff in the codex. And I'm a much bigger fan of, like, a lot of games have. I feel like a lot of games do that with audio logs.
Yeah.
But a lot of games, and I've been talking about this for years, do it badly by making the audio logs a thing that you have to stand there and listen to, as opposed to, my favorite example of audio logs is in the original BioShock, because you start the audio log and then you can listen to it as you're running around killing people and doing other stuff. That way you can get some insight into the backstory of the world while you're doing other stuff, as opposed to grinding the game to a halt by making you stand there and listen to the actual honest-to-God log all the way through. Trying to think if I can think of anything else off the top of my head. I think that might be all that I have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't think of anything.
Resident Evil's done that a little bit with some of their, like, because I was listening to
a lot of the original Resident Evil, a lot of the stuff that Umbrella was doing.
It's like in memos,
and memos and books, and like there's the main story of that you're totally getting of them trying to survive this house and the reason that they're there.
Yeah.
But then like there's also all these memos about kind of like what Umbrella was doing, like what
right.
And some of it's obtuse and some of it's not as obtuse, but
yeah. Well, I was also just thinking of, I was listening to the Bonfireside Chat guys' other podcast, Watch Out for Fireballs, and they were talking about Resident Evil 4 and how, like, there's kind of a bunch of dangling plot threads in there that they then tie up in Operation Ada and Divergent Paths, or whatever the other kind of like alternate episodes for Resident Evil 4 were. So I don't know. I mean, I think that stuff's in there. It's mostly just, I think that I would probably say that most of the time the main story isn't obfuscated to the point where you won't understand it. That's kind of one of those things about Souls that I feel like people like quite a bit, is when there's a new Souls thing, is lorsters getting out there and trying to figure out and put it all together, because it is so obtuse. But most of the time, I feel like the main story is not obtuse, but then you have all of the color come through logs and codexes and things like that, which I enjoy.
Like I would definitely. I know you didn't really care for it, but Alan Wake. There's a lot of.
Oh, the pages?
Okay. And audio logs and radio shows and the Night Spring stuff. Like, there's a lot of... Remedy does that a lot.
Yeah.
They do it in Max Payne 1 and 2. They do it in Alan Wake. They do it in Quantum Break.
Well, when we were playing, it wasn't necessarily that I disliked those elements in that game. It's that recording the game, I was a little bit hesitant to have whole sequences where we're just sitting there reading a piece of paper as opposed to running around shooting stuff, or watching a TV show, right? As opposed to running around shooting stuff. So,
or watching a Energizer battery commercial while the darkness is like right at your back.
Yep, or that.
That was actually the one biggest complaint I had with that game that I will totally forgive. I will totally concede to anybody that brings that up as like one of the worst game-breaking things ever in a fucking video game.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, well, then Joseph asks, sorry, John, this one also probably comes a little bit more to me than it does to you.
Of course it does.
Dear Jeff and Super Sexy John, I just completed
Super sexy.
Yep. I just completed Dark Souls 3, and I absolutely loved it. Not as good as its predecessors, but still in my mind a worthy entry in the Souls franchise and a poetic end to the series as a whole. My question is, what are your expectations for the final DLC? Do you think the Ring City will answer some of the questions related to Londor, as Artorias of the Abyss did for Ulasil in Dark Souls 1? Thanks, and many blessings of the Dawn Lord be upon you, your friend forever for the multiverse and beyond, Joseph.
So you know what I think the final DLC is going to bring?
Tell me.
No answers. I think it's going to just infuriate the entirety of the Dark Souls fandom.
I think so too. I've actually been avoiding it because there have been people who've gotten their hands on it who've been like streaming it and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But the Dark Souls 3 to me has a bit of an ending problem. The same way that, like, I don't know, it's part of Dark Souls 3 that they didn't have. In retrospect, I actually think that the ending for Dark Souls 2 is better than the ending for Dark Souls 3 because Dark Souls 3 doesn't really have a... Dark Souls 1, we played it, has a final boss.
Yeah.
And the final boss is Gwyn, and that's very easy, right? That's just like, you know who this guy is. Even if you're not doing lore stuff, you got enough people telling you who is Gwyn and what's going on, the Age of Flame. It's hard to miss that plot point. Dark Souls 2 is a little bit harder to untangle because your character's motivations in the beginning are so nebulous, but Nashandra being the queen who seduced the king and blah, 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 okay, that makes sense as well. You're on a personal quest, Nashandra, blah, blah, blah. Dark Souls 3, the ending is a lot more nebulous, and if you don't do the steps to get the one secret ending, all the rest of the endings are kind of like... This is the third game where where your options at the end are like relink the fire or don't relink the fire, and there's another option that you can get to that I would consider to be the true ending, but they don't really, I feel like, emphasize what you're doing in that ending well enough. So the best thing that I feel like could happen in Ring City is if they pull a Leviathan from Mass Effect and make that ending more explicitly if they're a little bit more explicit about what exactly is happening, why you would want to do that, and what the repercussions of you doing that secret ending are, because that's literally the crux that the whole game, the ending a lot of time is going to make or break a game story. There's also a whole bunch of stuff about the Sable Church of Londor and the angels and all this stuff that probably needs to be talked about, but the first DLC was so not talking about that and kind of missed a lot of the point of it that it was like, And there are a bunch of hooks in that first DLC that say that the second DLC is going to be more about this side story, that it's going to be about the main game. I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly, in all honesty, wouldn't be surprised if like you play it and you beat it, and then like your character gets a letter, like you open the letter, and then on the screen it says, "Dear fans of Dark Souls, stop asking me to make these games. Fuck you. You lose. Good day, sir. End of game."
Yeah.
Because, in all honesty, every decision that has been done with Dark Souls 3 makes me just feel like that Miyazaki went, you know what? I'm going to make a good game. I'm going to make a good game that everyone enjoys, but just a fucking, just to jab it in, I'm going to leave some stuff ambiguous, more ambiguous than people would like.
I see here.
And I'm just going to remake the first game because fuck you.
I've talked about this a little bit before, but I'll say it again. I don't think that Miyazaki likes to make. Well, okay, I need to go to the Wikipedia real fast. But here's the thing: Dark Souls was Dark Souls 1 was Demon Souls like 2.0.
Yes.
Like it took a lot of the things from Demon Souls, which took a lot of things from previous From games like King's Field and Shadow Tower, a bunch of other things, and kind of moved them forward. So to me, Dark Souls sat on top of a mountain that it was like the top of a structure that had been built by these other games coming before it, where they were working with different types of systems and learning how to refine them, and then finally you ended up with Dark Souls. And
I even feel like you could even go a step further and say that Bloodborne is the next one up. Because it's building on a little bit of Dark Souls, even though it's a different genre.
Right.
But it is building on some of that stuff.
Right. So the thing is that Dark Souls 2 then was made by a different person.
Correct.
Right. So it had a different tenor and flavor to it. Right. Dark Souls 3, I feel like, is one of the first times that we're seeing Miyazaki do a sequel. Specifically, like when you look at the stuff that he was the director on, he was the director on Armored Core 4 and Armored Core 4 Answer. Then he went Demon Souls, and then Dark Souls, and then Bloodborne, and then Dark Souls 3. But, I mean, Armored Core, I'm not really super familiar with those. But when you look at it, Bloodborne's like its own original thing, right? So he kind of came up with an idea. He made this whole thing, blah, blah, blah. And Dark Souls kind of stands by itself as a story. Like, if there was only Dark Souls and Dark Souls there was no 2 or 3, it would be fine on its own. It would be a beginning, a middle, an end. It has an ending that is ambiguous and leaves it up to you to make your own decisions and blah, 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 blah. It didn't need a sequel. But 2 came out, it did what it did, it made it more of a character story than a world story, and that's fine. That's a way to do a sequel. Now you get to Dark Souls 3, and I feel like this is just completely uncharted waters, and then what they did was just make Dark Souls 1 again, sort of, with a few changes and a few different things. And I like Dark Souls 3. There's nothing wrong with Dark Souls 3. It's just that a sequel has a harder time, in my opinion, being overcoming the original in video games.
I just my big thing is I don't think he wanted to make it.
I don't think so either.
And I think he honestly is like, I have nothing else to say. I said everything I wanted in the first game, but fans are demanding it. And he's such a nice guy that he decided to make a good game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's like, but I'm not going to put the effort to do anything new because I already fucking made this game.
Yeah.
You want another Dark Souls for me? It's just going to be another fucking it's going to be Dark Souls 1 again.
Well, and I don't want to, there are things about Dark Souls 3. Again, Dark Souls 3, I feel like, has a damned if you do, damned if you don't problem with it, where if you don't have Solaire's armor anywhere and a Sunlight Covenant in Dark Souls 3, the fans are going to get all fucking pissy about it. If you don't have references to Dark Souls 1 for nostalgia, people are going to get pissy about it. Like, there's a guy in Dark Souls 3 that's wearing Havel the Rock's armor that's fucking ridiculous. So, like, why would that be a thing? Why would that be a thing? And you can do the mental gymnastics to make that a thing, but the reason it's there is because people like Havel the Rock.
Yeah.
And there's no real good reason, to shove that in. Like Dark Souls 2, I have a lot more respect for because Dark Souls 2 didn't lean on the lore of Dark Souls 1 as much as Dark Souls 3 did.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm hoping it's going to be good. I'll be honest. When Bloodborne came out, I was like, meh. When the Old Hunters came out, it was like, fuck yes. Like, this fixes all of the stuff that I had, introduced a bunch of new things, was a great addition to the series, and made the game that it is today.
Yeah.
So who knows? This is the big one. This is the big DLC, and it's the last.
Also, having said that, Miyazaki did say this it's not going to be the end of the game. That the DLC will not enhance the game. It's just a side story that takes place in the same world. It is not required to understand the story of the main game.
Also, I always feel like it's worth pointing out that Miyazaki has this idea about storytelling that he got from when he was a kid, and he tried to read Lord of the Rings, and he couldn't because, well, he could read parts of it, but he didn't. His English wasn't good enough, so he would just mentally make up the parts of the story that he couldn't understand, and that's part of the reason that he likes to do the storytelling that he does is because he likes the players to kind of create their own stories and fill in the blanks with their own stuff. And I'm wondering in Dark Souls 3 if he, like in Dark Souls 1, it's like he hid a lot of that stuff, but people just sussed it out real easily. And then if in Dark Souls 3, he literally left things out to be like, I'm not going to tell you this or this or this. It's up to you to basically imagine your own story. They are literally not in the game. They're literally a piece of information that you want that I have not put in this game because it's up to you to come up with your own idea of what this game is. So.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see next week, actually.
Yeah, you'll get to see next week.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'll have to see it at some point when we do it as a Patreon sequential.
You heard it, John. Confirmed. Dark Souls 3.
Like we weren't going to fucking do it,
Full
Jeff.
sequential. You guys
On
heard it.
Patreon. Like it wasn't going to happen. Probably.
I'm just going to start when we play Darksiders. I'm just going to start running. I'm going to start looking at speed runs online about how to get through the levels as fast as possible. John's like, holy shit, we went through 4 areas in 20 minutes? I'm like, yeah. Dark Souls, man. Actually, but that's perfect because if the DLC comes out next week, I'll play it and beat it, and then I'll have a good handle on like where all those things are in the series, and we can go through it. But Daniel writes in with a less specific question and says, "Hey, Jeff and John, it's another Daniel. Love the show as a loyal Patreon subscriber. Anyway, on to the question. What's your food and or drink of choice when playing video games? Mine is pistachios, which is incredibly counterintuitive as you require 2 hands to open the shell and actually eat them. ONT for the drink. Also, I'll be in Austin all the way from Australia in May. Can I buy you or anyone from Rage Lake drinks and Taco Bell, which I have yet to try? Would be great. Cheers, Daniel." Daniel will go to Taco Bell, and I could watch the disappointment on your face and put it on Facebook when you're like, "What the fuck? Is this what you guys have been fucking talking about? This shit's terrible."
Yeah. When you come to, let us know. Just let us know when you're in town, and we'll totally, we'll hang out.
As a side thing, when people come to town, please don't just message me once, but like bug me about it, because a lot of times if you're like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town in 2 weeks," and I'm like, "Yes," and then it just
also. Maybe message some of the other people, not just Jeff.
That's true too.
Because I think the last person that came in town only messaged you, and you had, like you said, I think they messaged you once, and you had forgotten to say something.
Yes.
And then the day of, you were like, "Oh yeah, by the way," and I'm like, "I've already got plans that today, so I'm sorry, I can't cancel them." Kind of thing. Like it was one of those things where had I known, I would have totally gone. And so it's like, hit me up on Twitter, like at John Sutton. Say, "Hey, I'm in town. We should go do something. Or I'm going to be at this place in town on such and such day, or you should come out. We'll hang out, and and we'll totally be there."
Yeah. As for food, I don't really snack and game at the same time.
Yeah.
I do drink a lot of coffee. I do drink a lot of beer. I do drink a lot of iced tea.
I drink a lot of Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
Like I'm like, how most people say like what is it, like 70% of their body is like water?
Yeah.
It's Dr. Pepper.
It's mostly Dr. Pepper.
It's 70% of my body is Dr. Pepper.
Are you an actual doctor at this point? You have a PhD?
You would think.
In spice?
You would think I would have osmosis of just as much as I've consumed of the Dr. Pepper that I would know how to be a doctor
when
in real life.
When you see somebody drinking a Mr. Pibb, do you run up and slap it out of their hand? Or you like, "Dr. Pepper, motherfucker!"
I did get very stern with a person who tried to pass off Pibb Extra as Dr. Pepper.
Oh shit!
Yeah, that happened at an Alamo Draft House. One of their they were like, "Oh, they didn't correct me," and they brought it. I was like, "Excuse me, this isn't Dr. Pepper." And he's like, "Well, yeah, it is." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And I was like, "It's Pibb Extra." And he's like, "How did you know?" I was like, "Because it's not Dr. Pepper, motherfucker."
You don't just give a man Mr. Pibb and call it Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, but anyways, back to my point. It's like I drink a lot of Dr. Pepper. As far as snacks while I'm gaming, I typically, like you said, I don't.
I don't snack in general.
Yeah.
Generally,
I mean, I do snack every now and then, but I don't like snack and game at the same time.
Yeah,
I think the most I will do is like beef jerky.
I think that the snack
or Slim Jims.
Yeah, a beer. That's the snack that I most often have with a game.
But yeah, it's like I don't actually like actual snack. Like I tend to, like I will stop gaming if I'm hungry. Like even if it's just to get like a bag of chips and eat something, I will completely stop gaming and just switch on the TV.
Yeah.
And watch something, and then when I get done eating, then I'll switch it back to the game.
That's me too. Yep. But mostly for me, it's because the setup of what I've got is my primary gaming is right next to my computer, is right next to my laptop and all this stuff. So it's pretty easy for me to just hit the PlayStation button and then look at my, open a browser window. So yeah, Daniel, also may I suggest to you, I don't know in Australia, but in America, they sell, you can buy a whole bag of pistachios that already have the shells off of them. So maybe that you don't have to put the controller down nearly as much. All right, this next one comes in from Ian. Ian says, "Hello, Jeff and Indomitable John. I have a tendency to spend what I would call an obscene amount of time in any character creation system. What is your personal preference when it comes to a character creator? Simple or in-depth? What do you aim for in the character you create? I tend to make characters that are physically quite different from me, usually a small female as opposed to me, a 6'7" male. Thanks to loyal patron and email creator, Ian." What's your feelings about character creation, John?
So I will say that there is a point. I forget what game it was, but there are some games where it's like they're so in depth that it's too much. It's too much.
Too much.
It scares the shit out of me, and I have to run away.
Yep. Those Saints Row 4 sliders. There are 15 pages, and every page has 25 sliders on it.
Yeah, but. But at the same time, I do want options there. So, I'm not like specific on like character creation. As far as like what I try to create, it depends on the game. Sometimes I'll try to create something that looks like me. Sometimes I just try to create something that looks passable.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily it just looks aesthetically pleasing. Like,
sure.
Like I won't try to make me, but I'll try to make something that looks like, like somebody I like. Oh, okay, I don't mind looking at this person for however many hours I play this game.
Sure.
Like usually I think I'm more towards that than anything. But and then unless it's a wrestling game in which I have to spend many hours making me and all the other rage select people and other things.
Yeah, I'll spend a fair amount of time in a character creator. In Dragon Age Inquisition, I restarted the game 12 times.
Yeah, because you couldn't. It looked different when you get out of the character.
It totally did. I'm like, don't put me in a character creator where you're shining a green light on my character. I don't know what the fuck they look like. Sometimes, yeah, I'll do that, especially if it's like a BioWare game where we're going to be spending a lot of time looking at the face of the person. I would like them to look a specific way. Dark Souls and Bloodborne nowadays, I've played them so many times that I'm just like, fuck it. Let's just pick one of the presets and go. Like,
yeah, like games where you're going to be wearing like armor over your character for pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that.
There was actually
I'm just gonna
in Bloodborne, I made one character where I went online because there was a whole Reddit subgroup called it was our Bloodborne sliders, and basically it was people who made different faces of different characters in the character creation engine, and then they would just screenshot all the sliders so you could go make them yourself. So I wanted to make a character that was Lady Maria from Bloodborne, and so I went and found somebody that made as close to what looks exactly like Lady Maria as possible, and then made that character, and then went and got Lady Maria's armor and her weapons and everything, and just to cosplay basically as that character. But in Dark Souls, yeah, it's no big thing because most of the helmets in that game you can't even see the face of the character, so it's not a big thing. But whenever I start up a new Dark Souls character, usually I'll just pick the default face and some default hair and then go for it, because it's that game, you're not having that much dialogue. You're not looking at your character's face all that much, so it's not really a big deal. I mean, when we played Dark Souls 2 and we had fucking... we had the fat guy. We had a fat guy in Dark Souls 2, right? Or just kind of an overweight guy a little bit?
I want to say it was a fat dude.
Yeah. And we had fucking purple-haired Silas in Bloodborne the entire time. I don't remember even noticing that after a while. All right. This next one comes in from... no signature, so I'm going to call you... Brack. Brack says, "My man Jeff, I've got... I finally looked up my school. I finally looked up from my school books long enough to catch your tweets about questions. Big news about Destiny 2 got leaked, and it's blowing up. Some Bungie employees. It's blowing up, and some Bungie employees refuse to comment. In the poster logo, the word beta can be seen. So, 2 questions. Number 1, how real are leaks, or are they sneaky marketing strategies for free ads and buzz? Keep in mind, Bungie is tight-lipped about the sequel and are currently promoting the latest Destiny event. And number 2, are previews or betas a smart move if feedback won't really change anything? For example, early reviewers of Iron Fist or beta for Call of Duty Infinite or Infinite Warfare or Mass Effect. Thank you for being my source of video game news since I was 15, and currently my beard mentor at the age of 20 from Brock." So,
okay.
So I feel like you can always tell whether a leak is real or actually a leak, or actually sneaky marketing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it comes where it's a real leak when you have those times where people are there, where they're like, "Hey, there's going to be a new Battlefield 1 trailer next Friday," and then like it goes up on YouTube on Monday and just keeps getting taken down, and then on Tuesday, like, all right, fuck you guys, all right, fuck you. Here it is. Here's the trailer.
I also think that there was a rumor going around like a couple days ago that Bungie was going to be making some sort of announcement by the end of this week.
Yeah.
So around like today or tomorrow, and then suddenly the Destiny 2 leak happened.
Yeah.
I think those are legit leaks.
I do too.
I don't think Bungie did it like, oh, this is actually marketing. We're gonna tell these stores to leak it and
Yeah, it also depends on where they come from. Usually when they come from, like if there's ever like an ESRB rating or like a LinkedIn job thing, like somebody's resume on LinkedIn or whatever, those are usually pretty legit. But this one, It's a poster.
It's literally a poster from a video game store from another country.
Italian, GameStop Italy. It says September 8th release date along with a beta. I think the September 8th release date is actually legit because it's supposed to come out this year sometime.
Yeah. Some people would say that all of Destiny is a beta.
Yeah. All of Destiny 1?
Yeah.
A lot of salt for Destiny there, John.
I did not like that game.
Apparently. I don't know. I felt like they managed to fix a lot of those problems when it came to the Sunken King or the Iron Boner or whatever. And then number 2, our previews or betas a smart move if feedback won't really change anything. So I feel like that's a very loaded question because a lot of times what those betas are for are not to ask everybody like, hey, do you think we should totally change this game from the ground up?
Call of Duty, like them doing their online multiplayer betas, are not there to basically say, do we need to make any changes? They're there more to, can our servers support the workload that they're going to be putting in once the game launches?
Yeah.
Like that's the purpose of those, not let's change the game because something's broken.
Right.
He mentioned Iron Fist. Them sending out the 6-episode preview to reviewers was not a, hey, tell us if this is bad. It's, hey, here's the first 6 episodes. Go give us good press, hopefully.
Right.
And unfortunately...
Yeah, because there's no way that they were going to go back and... Yeah. Like, if the reviewers for the preview of Iron Fist were down on it, they weren't going to back up, not release it, and then spend a year retooling it to make sure that it was good. Now, that's not to say that doesn't ever happen, because you remember Neo had the weapon degradation and the alpha that they took out in the main game. There have been places where they have made structural changes to a game that are within the power to make, depending on fan feedback. But I feel like a lot of times, that's a misconception that alphas and betas are there for people to make like artistic /style /structural game critiques that then the developers would then go back and change. That a lot of times, just as you said, those are more about server stability, network infrastructure, if people are having a problem connecting to each other. Because honestly, as somebody who used to work in QA a long time ago, a lot of times you don't know until you put your thing in the hands of several thousand people and let them fucking throw hammers at it, right?
Yeah.
There's no way in a lab where you've got a dozen or 24 people to figure out whether your infrastructure is going to work when you've got 6,000 people all trying to log on to your server at the same time. There's just no way to simulate that until you put it out in people's hands. People are doing crazy shit. They're doing dumb shit. They're trying to break the game. So, but yeah, I still feel like alphas and betas actually, John, have gotten weird.
Yeah.
Because they've become a reward, like the way that you'll have that, pre-order now and get access to the beta. And like I do that because we got a show where we look at betas, just to kind of get an early look at games.
Yeah.
But betas have pretty much taken the place of demos in a lot of ways, because nobody does demos. Well, there are some demos out there, but we've talked before about how in the long run demos tend to not make much sense for developers, because the people, your best result is that you're going to get people who weren't already excited for your game interested in your game, but you have depending on how good your game is, you have a much higher chance of quashing people who were already excited to buy your game and driving away the sales that you already made for it. If it's
I can honestly think of like a few instances where a demo have actually like improved on the game.
Yeah,
like not say improved as in they went back and made changes, but improved as in like it improved the sales.
Right.
One of the big ones I can think of is Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, or whatever the fuck it was called. That game, like, I remember there was like no hype. There was little hype, but not like a huge amount of hype. And then they released that demo like 2 weeks before the game came out.
Yeah. And
just like everyone was like, no, you need to play this demo. And like I even downloaded, I was like, holy shit, this is a good demo.
Yep.
Like this game wasn't even on my radar, and I want it now. You know, and it turns out I bought it, and it was a fucking great game.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. I never really know the average age of the person listening to this, but you remember back in the old days, they used to, or no, they still do it. Final Fantasy had a thing where they would put the demo for Final Fantasy in with a game that you fucking didn't care about.
Well, it's like, what was it? Crackdown? The original Crackdown had a Halo 3 beta.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I remember Zone of Enders had the demo for Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
Battle Arena, no. Tobal #1 had the Final Fantasy VII demo in with it. I remember because I bought Tobal #1 for that reason, which was not the worst game in the world, but kind of a very weird square fighting game thing.
Yeah, Microsoft tends to still do that, where they'll be like, "Oh, you want to get in the beta for this game? You pre-order this game, and you'll get guaranteed." Like, what was it? Doom even had that, where if you pre-ordered Wolfenstein, you got into the beta for Doom.
Was it Wolfenstein or was it?
It was one of their games.
One of their things.
But it was if you bought this game, you got guaranteed access to the Doom beta.
Yeah, maybe it was Wolfenstein. Yeah, so I don't know. I honestly feel like betas have gotten a little out of whack.
Yeah.
I think that the Mass Effect thing is actually a much more interesting way if you're confident in your game, saying, "Hey, here's 3 hours worth of our game, here's 5 hours worth of our game." That's a great way to leave people in a place where they're just like, shit, well, fucking give it to me right now. But anyway. And then we got one final question this week that comes in from JD, and JD says, "Hello,
JD.
Jeff, and accompanying rad co-host John.
Woo.
I was scrolling through Facebook and saw a video the Sonic page put up with Dr. Eggman, something with an Eggman plush toy. I don't know, wasn't really paying attention, but it got me thinking, who's your favorite campy villain in video games? Thanks for answering my question. Hope you guys have an awesome week. Also, something Dong Lord from JD. Favorite campy villain in a video game? Go, John."
I do actually really like Dr. Eggman.
Oh, yeah?
But I also have like a weird appreciation of that because his original character name in the U.S., like not like the original Japanese was always Dr. Eggman.
Right.
But in the U.S., he was Dr. Robotnik.
Yep.
I am related to the person who came up with that name.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I did not know I was related to this person for a long time, but then when I did a podcast and apparently he was Googling the last name and messaged me and was like, "Hey, are we related?" And I was like, let's look into it. It turns out he's like a third cousin of mine, and, but he's totally worked at Sega, and
cool.
Like I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And he's the dude who totally coined the name Dr. Robotnik.
Okay.
But no, it's so. But even with that, aside from that, it was me just name dropping stuff. But I like
Look at
Dr.
John over here just humble bragging his ass off, man.
Yeah, but no, I actually like Dr. Robotnik. But I'm trying to think of like a good. I
got a few. Do you want some time to think?
Yeah.
Okay. Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. I really like that guy. He's a real goddamn ham. Albert goddamn Wesker from the Resident Evil series, especially that video of him in the very beginning, like the live action where it's like the guy with all the spiky hair just like, ooh yeah, and I got sunglasses on. I think that Handsome Jack is a real fun, campy, kind of over-the-top villain.
I can agree with that.
Let's see. Let me think of some other ones. Oh my God, Revolver Ocelot from the Metal Gear franchise is fucking. That's just about anything that Kojima does. There's always somebody in there who's just like, oh man, are you fucking like Liquid Snake? And when you and I were playing Metal Gear, like just he's such a goddamn ham. Cam Clark is just up there fucking like, brr, mur, 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 Liquid Snake. He needs a to be twirling around his big fucking handlebar mustache. I tell you what, that asshole corporate guy in Watch Dogs 2 was really hateable. I really liked him. He was kind of campy.
I'm trying to think of like more older campy villains.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to go through my head of just like
Wario.
Yeah,
Wario's
I really like Dr. Wily, though he's not. I don't actually consider him campy because he's actually kind of a tragic figure in a way, but I kind of like him.
Okay.
But I'm also trying to think of like, because I feel like there's a villain that I'm not thinking of. It's a little bit cartoony, a little bit campy.
Okay.
That is also like smarmy and like and I'm part of me wants to say it's a Psychonaut, the villain from Psychonauts, but I don't know.
Never really played Psychonauts. Couldn't tell you.
Like Psychonauts keeps popping in my head, but I don't think that's the one I'm thinking.
You know who the world's greatest villain is, right?
Who?
Mario.
Mario's not a villain, Jeff.
Have you never played Donkey Kong Jr.?
Okay, good point.
Mario's he's a psychopath, man.
That's only because fucking Donkey Kong was fucking stole his woman and was like, I'm gonna throw barrels at you. And Mario's like, we don't fuck your kid.
Yeah, he's a monkey. You're gonna hold that monkey. You're gonna torture that poor monkey. Don't torture that poor monkey. Yeah, Mario's a goddamn psychopath. Let's see. Trying to think of some other kind of. You talk about smarmy, and this is a classic
comedic
one.
or whatever.
Larry from Leisure Suit Larry.
He's not really a villain though. He's the main character.
Let's see. Campy villains. God, back to Resident Evil's had a lot of good campy villains.
Yeah.
Fucking. Who's the guy in Resident Evil 4, the little Napoleon guy?
Oh.
Ramirez or Santiago or whatever
I think
his
it's
name
Santiago.
is. He's fucking him. The dialogue between him and Leon is just fucking. It's priceless. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some other ones.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ooh, Patches the hyena is a good smarmy villain.
Yeah.
Sort of. I don't know. Anything else? Just opening up my whole entire
I noticed.
PlayStation
You're
4
like, I'm gonna look at all these.
library and look at all these different games that I have over here. Joker, he's pretty campy. Joker in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
I don't know. Got nothing else?
Nothing else.
Nothing's coming to mind? All right. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Let us know in the comments what you thought. I decided this week to add back in the kind of talking about stuff where John and I talked about Iron Fist. So let us know. I don't know. What do you think about that? The podcast has been getting some pretty low ratings on YouTube's recently, and I don't know if it's just because people want to hear us talk about stuff besides video games or because they're tired of, whatever. Yeah, let us know what you think down in the comment section. mail@rageselect.com is the email address where you can send in your emails, and then we will read your emails on the email portion of the email show where we do the emails. And with that, good night, everybody.
Night.